Alright guys, I have had the Google Pixel Fold for a few days now, and I've taken a bunch of pictures, and I've also taken my Z Fold 4, and I've taken a bunch of pictures as well, the same pictures as on the Pixel Fold. And in this video, I'm going to show them to you side by side. We're going to jump from shot to shot, camera to camera, and I'm going to break down what I'm seeing in them and try to give you the best information that I can as to what you could expect out of the camera on the Google Pixel Fold in comparison to, of course, like I said, the Galaxy Z Fold 4. Now, before we jump into those samples, I want to say just a few things about the experience of taking pictures on the Google Pixel Fold just in general. And in general, it is a pretty darn positive experience. The camera application moves around relatively quickly. The shutter does feel decently fast. We're going to talk about that a bit more, but it does seem like a camera that does take that photo fast enough, at least as fast as the Z Fold 4 in a lot of instances. And it's a camera that, like all the other Pixels on the market, I feel quite confident when I snap a picture. I can pull this thing out of my pocket, double click the power button, click on that shutter, and I know that I've probably got a usable shot from that one click. With the Z Fold 4, that's usually also the case. I'm not one of these people that think that the Z Fold 4's camera is bad. I actually think it's quite good. It's quite underrated as far as I am concerned. Now, both of these phones do utilize a flex mode for their camera application, although I must tell you that the Pixel's flex mode to me is far more usable simply because of the aspect ratio of the screen. Both phones also let you use the cover display with the device open so that you can use your primary sensors to take pictures of yourself, and they both do a really nice job of pulling this off. They get a lot of things right in similar ways. With all of that said, let's jump over to my other monitor and I will show you what we're going to be looking at here. A phone comparisons album. We're going to start off with the primary sensor, and through all of these, we're going to go Z Fold, then Pixel Fold, Z Fold, Pixel Fold, so forth and so on in this manner. And we're going to jump in, we're going to zoom in, we're going to really take a look at some of these details. So this is, of course, the Z Fold 4 taking the shot, and we are sticking with pretty much across the board stock auto settings. There are some macro photos you're going to see later where I use manual focus. Otherwise, all the shots are in auto. That's what people use the vast majority of the time. So on this photo, the first thing that stands out to me is just how vibrant and colorful this photo is. There is a ton of contrast and ton of pop. However, the Samsung phone does lose a lot of the detail on these white flowers because they are just so bright. I do think this is an overall respectable and pleasant image, but it's warm, and again, you're losing the details in these flowers. The Pixel Fold does, in my mind, a better job. And the primary reason is because when we zoom into these flowers, you can actually see some details on them that you don't have on the Pixel Fold. You can see how big of a difference there is in the way that they're doing the colors. And that is going to consistently be the big difference between the Z Fold 4 and the Pixel Fold, the color temperature and how pumped up those colors are. You may also notice a difference in the level of natural bokeh. This is not portrait mode, but let's pick something out. Let's look at these vines growing through the fence over here on the Pixel Fold. And on the Z Fold, do you see how much more bokeh they are looking? They look softer, and that is because the Z Fold 4 has a physically larger sensor, and there is, because of that, more bokeh. You can probably see it in this plant down here as well. Yeah, there's more bokeh. So there's some stuff to like out of both of them. Looking at the Z Fold 4 here, a picture of my koi pond that I absolutely, don't worry, I've taken most of these plants out. They're growing so fast, guys. These water hyacinth and water lettuce, that they're taking over my plant. The fish are absolutely fine. You can actually see one of them has managed to bloom there as well. It's a happy, healthy pond. Lots of contrast, lots of really bright colors. On the Pixel Fold, just like we're expecting, everything is much more natural and much more tame. Do you like this photo that is punchy, it's vibrant, it's ready to post on Instagram? Or do you like this, which is much more accurate to what my eye actually managed to see in real life? That is going to be up to you. If we zoom in and we try to look at some fine details here, let's look at the riffles on the water lettuce. Maybe that's a better spot to look right there, nice and clear. And if we go back, how does the Z Fold 4 handle it? It's really similar. The level of detail is going to be quite consistent between these two devices, but again, the colors, the warmth, that is where their differences are. Up a little bit closer, again, it's the color and the warmth. The Z Fold 4, Pixel Fold. The Pixel Fold, though, because of the fact that it's not blowing things out, is actually retaining some detail. Look right down here. It is so dark there because of how much contrast there is in this image. Look how bright that is, and how dark that is. If we go to the Pixel Fold, it's more even. This is not blown out, and this, you can actually resolve the details of these roots. Very stylized, very colorful, very natural, very realistic. Now, the wide-angle lens is a place where the Z Fold just has an absolute victory, okay? It just is what it is. Look how much wider this is than the Pixel Fold. And if we start zooming in and looking at details and colors, this is just a more pleasant image. The details aren't tremendous, but it's very green, it's very poppy, but it's not super blown out like the primary sensor usually gets. This looks quite drab, and the details are maybe slightly better, but I would trade that for these colors and this field of view. To me, the wide angle is a win for the Z Fold. So another wide angle shot here that demonstrates how much more you can get in the shot between the Z Fold and the Pixel Fold. Again, to me, that wide angle on the Z Fold is a win. More of a landscape shot for the wide angle. Look at these colors, how just beautiful and vibrant this is. Nothing wrong with this shot because, again, this is so natural and realistic. I just wish it was a little bit wider. Zooming in on the Z Fold, details are fine. It's a wide angle. They're not going to be incredible on the Pixel Fold. Again, I think maybe it's a little bit sharper, but again, would you trade the sharpness for the extra field of view? I probably would. So now on this one, I wanted to kind of test some of the zoom. So this is 1x on the Z Fold 4, and let's zoom in and take a look at some of the details on Rose's, one of Rose's favorite balls. Details are okay, very, very vibrant poppy colors. On the Pixel Fold, this is what we get. And I think that the details might be a hair better. It's really, really close though. Now, if we go to 3x, of course, this is using the telephoto lens on the Z Fold 4. And if we zoom in here, we can see that the details are quite nice and sharp. You can actually see the bands left on this ball. Now, of course, the Pixel Fold does not have a 3x lens. We, in fact, had to just pinch to zoom into 3x digitally, and this is what we came up with. And if we zoom in, let's look for those same bands. Hey, they're still there, guys. And this is why I've said in prior videos, don't bother putting a 3x telephoto on your phone anymore. If you're not going to do 5x, don't even bother, because 3x cropped in digitally on a lot of these phones looks just as good. There's no point in doing this anymore. Now, if we go to 5x, we've gone with the 3x telephoto, but then we've cropped in digitally even further with the Z Fold 4, and the details do look good. Those bands are there. You can see some individual rocks on the ground here. But of course, now the Pixel Fold has a telephoto lens to go to 5x. And of course, because of that, look at the level of details you can resolve, the texture on the ground, the individual threads there. To me, where wide angle was a clear win for the Z Fold, any kind of zoom is going to be a win for the Pixel Fold. At 3x, it holds up just fine against the optical zoom. At 5x, it absolutely dominates. Now, looking at, again, the primary sensor with Rose running towards me, the Z Fold did a good job of keeping everything in focus quite nicely. She was running, and again, good lighting, nicely done in focus. The Pixel Fold, same exact picture, same exact scenario, might be slightly sharper on her face, but they both did a good job. Now, here's where things got weird for me. I expected the Pixel Fold to do better indoors with movement, but that's not what happened. On the first shot here indoors with her running towards me, it's pretty close. If we zoom in, this is not super well done. She's fairly blurry around her eye. The Pixel Fold, I think, did a slightly better job, maybe, but man, it is absolutely close. Neither one of them did great. Again, not great lighting, though. The next picture, though, yeah, she's blurry. She's kind of in a jumping motion, but if we go to the Pixel Fold, she is a smeary mess. The Pixel Fold actually did considerably worse on that test. And once again, on another trip through, the Z Fold, it's not great, but when you compare it to the Pixel Fold, it's better. She's a smeary mess. So again, in substandard lighting, moving targets, believe it or not, guys, something that we've seen with Samsung phones for ages, motion blur, the Pixel Fold is actually doing a little bit worse for me in these instances. Very, very surprising for me to see that. And another place where this was equally surprising to me was low light. I had a lot of lights turned off, went into night mode, and the Z Fold 4 did a decent job of focusing on this stuff. It's much darker in this room than this would lead you to believe. And the Pixel Fold didn't do as well. It's darker and it's not as crisply done in focus. Outside, just as the sun was going down, the Z Fold 4 does a pretty good job. The details are okay. Again, this is much darker in reality than it looks like. In fact, Samsung probably over brightens it. The Pixel Fold, in this instance, I like the shot of a bit better because it does reserve the fact that it was getting dark a little bit better. These look quite close to me. Just one is brighter than the other. If I brighten this one up, it's going to look really, really similar. In this image here, let's zoom in. This is on the Z Fold 4. Let's look at the text here. Not really legible at all, whereas the Pixel Fold did manage to capture a lot more detail, and the text is actually pretty easily legible. So like I said, very much a back and forth affair. And then once it got quite dark, both of them sort of turn into out of focus, blurry, mushy sorts of messes. And in fact, I think Samsung, again, maybe did slightly better than the Google Pixel Fold. So I would say on night mode, Pixel was better up here in this corner. Neither one of them are great. It's kind of a toss-up for me. They're really similar. I expected Pixel to have a pretty substantial lead here in terms of night mode, but that's just not really what happened either. It ended up being very, very close. Now, one of my favorite things to do with the Z Fold 4 is to go into manual mode and then zoom in 2x digitally and go into manual focus to take these sorts of faux macro shots. With that, you get shots like this. They can be in really nice focus, nice details in here, but take advantage of that natural bokeh from that larger sensor. I was immediately curious to see if the Pixel Fold could do something similar with no Pro mode, simply zooming in 2x and tapping to focus. This is the end result. And I think that it does a respectable job, but the biggest difference is how shallow the focus depth is with the Z Fold versus the Pixel Fold. The Z Fold just has that softer bokeh in the background, even though the Pixel Fold does a pretty good job. Here's another really good example of this. Look how soft this focus is, how narrow the focus is in this shot versus the Pixel Fold, which gets much more of this clover in focus. This is a stylistic choice. Do you like this sort of soft bokeh, or do you prefer more of it to be in focus? They both do a great job, just in different ways. Let's run through these selfie shots now. This is the external cover display selfie for the Z Fold 4, and we'll do the beard hair test. It looks fine. It's a little bit grainy, nothing special. On the Pixel Fold, to me, my color looks more correct. The detail is very, very similar, but I think there's less graininess. The Z Fold kind of has this unpleasant yellowish tinge to my skin and everything. There's grain. I don't think that this is a great looking selfie. I look kind of jaundiced and sick. I think that this looks more accurate and better, and again, less grain. If you use portrait mode, it's kind of similar, right? Like it's mostly the color temperature that it's getting wrong. This looks over sharpened as well. To me, this is just a more pleasant selfie. Neither one of them handle hair all that well. They both fail at that in very similar ways. Now, using the tablet display selfie cameras, we're using the under display camera on the Z Fold 4, and this looks as terrible as I remember, versus the camera that is in the bezel that everyone hates on the Pixel Fold. Well, maybe you shouldn't hate it as much because it looks a million times better than the camera on the Z Fold. And of course, you can actually use portrait mode on it. No, portrait mode is an option on the Z Fold 4. In that instance, again, the hair, not great. Using the primary camera with the cover display as the viewfinder on the Z Fold, again, this looks pretty good, but it just has this warmer yellowish look to it that I just don't necessarily love. Of course, the detail does look fairly decent. On the Pixel Fold, though, the color temperature just looks more accurate to me. The white balance looks better to me. The detail is at least as good, if not better. Going to portrait mode, this looks pretty good. I just hate the color temperature. Pixel Fold crops in a bit more, and I think just has, again, the more pleasant portrait mode. So taking pictures of people in this room, to me, the Pixel Fold just gets the white balance much more correct. Now, stepping back outside to take a couple more portraits in some better lighting, there are some really big differences with the way that the Z Fold 4 and the Pixel Fold handle portraits. So Here is Rose, and you can see here, this is such a high contrast, high color, such a poppy portrait. And I think that it does have a certain aesthetic that people are going to like, that I actually do like myself. Now with the Pixel Fold, by default, it's going to crop in a bit already, which I wish was something that it didn't automatically do, but it is what it is. The colors are much more tame. They're going for a much more subtle and softer look overall. The details at the end of the day are going to be very similar, but boy, oh boy, are those different looking shots. So here I tried to hold the phone a bit closer to compensate, to make the shots a bit more one-to-one, but it's hard to do when the dog's not necessarily cooperating all that well. But again, so much color, so much contrast. I quite like Samsung's photos. With the Pixel Fold though, you can see that again, it's a very different looking shot. It's not nearly as aggressive. It's meant to be a subtler approach to this portrait mode. And again, like a lot of things in this video, it's going to come down to personal preference, which one speaks to you more. So this is the Galaxy Z Fold 4 shooting in 4K at 30 FPS. Note the stabilization, the color, the detail, and any potential sounds that you're hearing. I do think that it does a pretty good job on video overall. But now we need to switch gears and see how the Pixel compares. Okay, so Pixel Fold, same exact setup, 4K, 30 FPS. Notice the sound of the barking dog, perhaps. How does that sound? The detail, the stabilization, all of these good things. How does this compare to the Samsung device, the Z Fold 4? It does look more stable while I'm filming. How will it look when it's done? Guys, I went into this expecting the Pixel Fold to absolutely dominate this competition, and as I went through this process, I was pleasantly surprised at how often the Z Fold 4 held its own quite admirably. When it comes to the primary sensor, they are really, really similar. In detail, they're similar. In terms of shutter speed, motion blur, they're pretty similar. In terms of color representation, that is where the differences can be found, and that is highly subjective. Do you want that ready-to-post picture, colors popping off the screen? Great, Samsung's there for you. Do you want more realistic colors that show you what your eyes saw? Maybe you can edit it yourself later. Great. The Pixel has that for you. With the ultra-wide, the Z Fold 4, I think, takes the cake. But with zoom, the Pixel Fold absolutely dominates. In video, well, the Pixel Fold's got better stabilization. Honestly, I think the color might have been a bit better on the Pixel Fold as well. I'm going to lean towards the Pixel Fold on video, but it's not by a huge amount. With portrait mode, when you're not in a weirdly colored room like this, it ends up being very, very close as well. I kind of like the way the blur looks on Samsung, but Google's white balance seems to be better sometimes as well. It's a bit of a toss-up. I will say Google's got the selfie cameras, in my opinion, both ways, cover display and on the internal display by a country mile. But at the end of the day, like I said, this thing's pretty back and forth. If you have a Z Fold 4 and you're looking at the Pixel Fold as an upgrade or a lateral move, whatever you want to call it, because of the camera, it's probably not going to be the upgrade that you're thinking it's going to be. I do think it's better overall, but guys, it's pretty darn close. They're both quite solid cameras in my estimation and in my testing. Hopefully, I've communicated that and showed it to you here in this video. So guys, that's what I've got for you today. Subscribe for more content just like this. I'll see you on the next one. And until next time, stay nerdy, my friend.